Om Shanti, and welcome. Welcome to today's workshop about inner purpose. And perhaps what we usually like to start with is a bit of a reflection. So just being aware of where I am right now, wherever it is. And the intention of this pause that I have is to slow things down inside. Sometimes it helps using my awareness on physical things. So I can even just observe the breath. I can observe the posture of the body. And when I'm in this state of observation, it just shifts my focus from one that is a moving target to something that is a bit more constant. And many do like the observation of the breath, mainly because it's simple. It's something simple to observe, something that is reliable, consistent. And it creates a feeling when there is something consistent, a feeling of more stillness. And that helps when there is stillness. It's the feeling of stillness. And it helps as things will come up in the mind, thoughts that can lead to emotions, past, present, or future. But the stillness allows me to see these thoughts emerge. This practice of accumulating stillness or inner silence is something that is very relevant in everyone's life. Because it is very connected to being able to make decisions. Decisions that uphold my integrity. To be able to see thoughts that can distract my decision making. To see options that may not actually be relevant. That may not reflect who I am. needing that quietness inside to start to feel what feels right. And this stillness, I can feel it in the body, but it's really where it begins. I can feel it where I think. I can feel it in the mind. And I exist right behind the center of the forehead, me, the thinker. The mind is in me, the being. So how I feel, how I think, really affects me, the being, how I operate. Om Shanti. So it's lovely when we take the topic that we will be sharing on and always look at it from perhaps a more easier way to understand. So we always like to take it into the physical first. And so I invite you just to think about this question, and you can answer in the chat box, you can unmute yourself. But what in physicality, what is purpose? How do we use that? And is it, because it's thinking about sort of day-to-day life, or relevant life events, things like that. How do we use that word? So we are driven to do it, and it helps us feel complete. Definitely. So think about your own personal circumstances. I think that's always the best way to go. You can think of what that was relevant like in your past. What have you used this aspect of purpose, sometimes destination, intent, different words that people use, it means the same thing though. Goals or objective that you want to achieve. Very good. And so why is in physicality, why is purpose important? Or is it important? To make sense of my life, clarity of my existence. Yes, very true. It gives you motivation. Excellent. And that's connected to what Sheila had shared. We're driven to do it and helps us feel complete. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that there is constantly purpose in what we do? Maybe it's not cognizant to us, but that there is purpose in everything that we do. So just to repeat the question, do you think that there is purpose in everything that we do? Like maybe we're not aware of what purpose is, but just even in daily tasks. So Jima shared. So hopefully that made sense. Pauline, I'll share it once more. Do you feel there is always purpose in everything we do? When you're not exactly sure if you're of your purpose, it can be stressful. Now it's interesting because there is sort of short-sighted purposes, like, I'm just going to the fridge to go get something, and you have to walk to the fridge to get something. And we're constantly doing through the day. So there's always, even though again, it's so robotic, that there's so many menial tasks that we do that it's kind of quite routine. And so we can have all these teeny little purposes, I guess you can call. They're very, very just, very temporary, just for that moment. And that can sometimes actually collude in terms of an overarching purpose. And there are even some cases where, as what Jima shared, we're not clear about our purpose. So we can sometimes be moving around, walking around, and sort of in a routine or quite robotic. Pauline, I hope your internet is working and hopefully that question was a bit more clear. So I know Sheila had shared, stressful if you don't have purpose. So yes, Pauline shared there is always purpose. In my experience, I wasn't paying attention in my life, so I don't know what my purpose was. So, this is where, especially let's say that you're learning something for the first time, it's just a task. Let's say you're just learning to use Zoom, right there at that moment, you're very much just trying to focus on the task, right? It's a big thing, but after time, it becomes quite robotic. Now, those are kind of like, I guess you can call them just task related purposes. So but that's when we do that all the time to the point where it does become routine. So for some of us, we've had to use Zoom all the time now. It's sort of like kind of robotic, but you can sort of get in this sort of robotic mode when you're doing things that you can now learn to actually physically have the capability of doing, and sort of lose that sense of overarching purpose. What happens if you don't keep a real clear sense of purpose? So just on a physical level, before we go into the spiritual, what happens if you don't have, because it can get, the line basically can get quite gray in terms of what purpose looks like in physicality and what purpose can look like in spirituality. But just talking about physicality, and this is where I'm inviting you to realize, maybe you don't realize, I didn't realize either, that the line can get quite gray. So just keeping this question simple, and just physicality, what happens when there isn't purpose? And I will give an example afterwards too. I know souls have shared it's stressful. And I know some have shared what happens when you don't pay attention in your life and you don't know what your purpose is. No contentment. Very big. You speed your time doing things you might not find fulfilling. Huge. And that's a big part of just doing this. You're just doing because there's fulfillment in doing, there's fulfillment in productivity, but is it really that fulfilling? It is fulfilling, but is it really gonna fulfill what you're looking for? It makes you unstable in everything and in everything you do. And this is actually very connected. What I noticed as well, there is an overlap of what we will cover today and experiment today with the inner compass session. Because if I'm not clear about what matters to me, what my focus is, what my purpose is, and that clarity requires that inner compass, which is why we started with the reflection with just, being able to practice learning to have a relationship with silence, with stillness. And that takes time. Because this last aspect of what Polly has shared, it makes you unstable in everything, in everything as well, in everything you do, is because then your focus isn't clear and you can get distracted. And when you get distracted, you're easily influenced. What do you think is the relationship between purpose and being able to learn how to achieve that purpose? So having a plan and actually having purpose. What happens if your plan isn't clear, but you have purpose, or you have purpose, and you don't, and you have a very clear plan, but you kind of forget your purpose? What do you think can happen in these two situations?
Sorry, the question you asked is you have planned, but you are not sure about your purpose. Is that what you asked?
Yeah, because this happens a lot. I'll give you an example. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's there. And this is because I went through this, wanted to go to medical school, right? And when I was much younger, and you need to keep it very clear what you're doing and how to do it, what you're doing, and like, what are you aiming for? And how are you going to do that? Because you would have some students like, oh, they want to go to medical school, but their efforts aren't actually reflecting that what they need to do to actually be successful. Or it could be the other way around, is that they're working really, really hard to become a doctor. And I knew somebody who had applied to medical school 3 times and was declined 3 times, but she was very clear. Nope, this is what I'm going to do. It never fazed her that I'm just going to apply again. So we call this in the study, aim and objective, is that both are important. I need to know where am I going, what I need to do, but I also need to know how. And they need to both be quite balanced. I need to be checking that. Does that question make sense?
Got it. Thank you.
And so seeing what souls have shared so far is that, yes, often our purpose is not very clear, right? And sometimes our plan is not clear. You're not able to reach your destination. And it's connected to that contentment piece. And this is why it's very connected to the inner compass. When we talked about during that last session about, what does destination mean? Is it a physical thing or is it a certain experience? And when that's not clear, and you can tell when it's not clear, you can feel it. You can feel it's not clear because other things distract you, other things pull your attention, other things become your priority. And the feeling inside is that it feels flat. Your destination, your end goal, your focus just doesn't have that spark of determination. There isn't that spark of motivation and momentum. And this is a really key piece about purpose. Yes, we might be talking about physical things, but it translates through into subtle spiritual things. So Jima shared, if any obstacle comes in the way, you might be sidetracked and disheartened and might lose hope. And that's absolutely what can happen. You know, it's interesting for those who had joined Inner Fitness last week. Actually, I don't think it was last week. It might have been the week before, but there was the first student of the study. He kept his destination very clear in his awareness, but there was also the how. And that's just as important. So this is what we call the aim and objective. What is the purpose of this? But where do I need to focus my efforts on? So this is what this is really about, is that the session is really about exploring, is my purpose honoring me? And so now when it comes to, you know, on a spiritual level, there is a connection, even let's say if it's physical, there's a connection between purpose and self-identity. What do you think that connection is? Purpose and self-identity. Close connection. And for those who are watching on YouTube, you can always type in the chat box thoughts, comments, questions, insights. You make your purpose a big part of who you are and how you present yourself to others. Definitely. And it's also even the other way around too, is that, and actually that's only if I'm clear. And I'll backtrack. Actually, you don't even have to be clear. If you have a perception of yourself, that becomes a big piece of what your purpose is related to. So faith and trust in yourself, that connection between purpose and your self-identity. And there's something, thank you for the sharings. There's something that was shared earlier when we were talking about what happens if I don't have purpose. It's stressful. Jima had also shared that there's no contentment. And so think about this for yourself. And, you know, and then there's this aspect here about faith and trust, because it has a lot to do with this aspect of contentment, has a lot to do with what is fulfilling me, what is going to feed me. That's what purpose is really about. Anything that we do in life on a physical level, when it comes to purpose, we're looking at things like career, looking at things like starting a family, you know, being able to have assets. Now, what do those all mean? There's a certain experience that individuals are reaching for. And I don't know how many souls I've talked to. I had this idea of what things were going to look like. And I was moving in that direction, whether it be any of these big life events. And I wanted this certain feeling. And it could be that, yes, I was able to attain that feeling, or it was totally not what I expected it to be like. So it's always about at that level of experience. And this is where it connects to inner purpose and where it connects with identity, because it doesn't even matter if I'm not aware of what my identity is. Everything that we do in life is always geared towards a certain feeling, certain experience, a certain quality of life. And that's a really huge piece of information we need. This is where the connection is in terms of why it's important to take the time to get to know who I am. And as we had mentioned, this is a Raja Yoga workshop, so it's based on the principles of Raja Yoga. And so the first lesson is that I am a spiritual being. And we had this very lovely question that came up in the Raja Yoga interview last Tuesday, but what does spirituality mean? And the answer was, it's about learning to be a spiritual being. But the issue is that our ideas of what spiritual have actually become quite unclear. And we often look at the very surface level of how you're supposed to act, how you behave, if you recycle or not, do you wear white clothes or not? There are certain things that might help in terms of a certain experience, but cannot replace the foundation of what that experience is. So the basis of Raja Yoga is that I am a spiritual being. I am a soul. I am a being of vibration. I'm completely driven by my awareness. I am just awareness itself. And whatever my awareness is what creates the experience that I feel. Because whatever my awareness is starts to feed and nurture certain kinds of thoughts, certain perspectives. And that creates this whole network of what we call experiences, perceptions, a whole world, basically. And in a way that we may all sort of see the same situation, but we'll see it through a different lens based on what our attitudes are, what we've experienced in the past, our filters, certain things that might have affected us and led to certain types of impressions. And so right now, to feel that I am a spiritual being, a being of quality, it's very much connected, because what we really want is actually to experience. But through time, because we are spiritual beings operating through the physical, we have lost that connection to ourselves. We used to feel that all the time, that sense of groundedness, that sense of fullness, peace, stability. And through time, because we just feel that, but because of coming into action and actually becoming quite familiar with the body and basically losing our attention on ourselves and then shifting that towards body and physicality, our relationship with ourselves has become disconnected. And we start to create this association that I feel certain things when something out there happens. And so then that disconnect has happened, but we still are needing to be fulfilled with those feelings. And those feelings are what is feeding basically me, the soul. And so this is so connected to purpose, is because, is it really about that car? Is it really about the security of a house? Is it really about getting that great job? Is it really about what our ideas of success, of what a great career is? Or is it a certain experience that we are looking for? Because we start to realize and perhaps notice within ourselves, once you achieve a physical purpose, you're still looking for something more. And it depends on where the soul is at in terms of their story, but not being able to fulfill that through physical means. So Pauline shared, going to our spiritual destination means letting go of the unnecessary stuff and taking with me what is my true, eternal, non-physical resources. Absolutely. And it's interesting about this unnecessary stuff, because it can get quite subtle You know, if, for example, you know, somebody had actually a couple had sent a pretty reactive text to me this morning, and I could feel the ego inside. You can feel that it's rough, its feathers were ruffled in that sense. And it was really about, will I take somebody else's sorrow? You know, that there was no intentions on my end for anything, but this is two pieces that I'm sure everyone feels, that not to give sorrow. And also what we actually forget is not to take sorrow. And that's a part of the unnecessary stuff, to be able to let go of things that actually don't belong to me. And this is very connected to what it is about being a soul. It's a whole world, it's a whole experience. And there's deep significance in that, is that my original state that is pure is purely of stability, lightness, peace, no trace of negativity. But we have a lot of this unnecessary stuff that we have built through time. It could be circumstances, it could be opinions that others have of me or I have of myself. All that stuff is just harboring inside and actually, you know, making it very unclear what my purpose is. And yet still at the end of the day, you know, I seek for that experience, whether it is, you know, so many different qualities that really resonate with us. And these are actually the original qualities of me, the soul. And so that's where it becomes quite blurry in that sense, because, you know, we have purpose, even if we're not aware we're soul. We have purpose when we are aware we're soul. But when we're not aware that we're soul, we have been getting a lot of fulfillment from a lot of things, and you're still experiencing something. But the issue is that the source of that experience is not something that is going to always be there, and it's not going to be reliable. And I was speaking to someone who was a young mother, and she had this idea that, you know, when her children would, you know, grow to a certain age, she'll be able to read bedtime stories to them. She already had this all in her head. And it was really interesting listening to her honest sharing. She's like, Nora, that was not the case. When she was 2, she was running around and I had to chase her all over the place. There is no bedtime story time. So it's like, she said, I had this complete idea of what it was going to be like when my child was a baby. And I was expecting that this was what was going to happen. That did not happen. And it was a beautiful example because, you know, we can create a whole tapestry of what something is going to be like. And still that fulfillment is out there. And so this is this aspect too, in terms of checking my purpose. Check first, what is my experience of myself? What is my awareness of myself? And also checking that, what am I experiencing about who I am? Because immediately right there is the what and there is the how. Is that locked within me actually is everything I'm looking for? Because what I'm looking for is experience. The experience of peace, the experience of fullness, experience of even feeling that nothing can affect you, feeling unlimited. These are things that you can't see, but when we lost ourselves, we start to connect those feelings with things out there to help us attain it. So in terms of purpose, that's why the first lesson in this study is, you know, considering myself to be a soul. It's because I have to constantly learn to shift back into that consciousness of who I am. It's not just about thinking I'm a soul. It's like, what is that experience like? It's basically waking up that I am, what identity that I used to relate as, but now I don't. And so, you know, it's quite interesting is that, you know, is that purpose relevant to me based on what my real identity is, right? And that's where it's sort of, we open up the floor for souls to really explore for themselves, because it's not about convincing someone, who are you? But that's what a big part of this journey is. Who am I? What is really going to feed me? Because that's going to help to clarify, is my purpose relevant to me, or is it to my image or to the roles? And is that purpose that I'm looking for going to fulfill me? Or is it, again, just going to fulfill the role and the image? And a lot of these sort of short, just temporary tasks. And I'm sure souls have felt this before, but where I am for work, individuals do not like if you go up to them to say hello. Happens all the time. They say, "Oh, I know you want something. That's why you come up to me and say hello." And it's actually the soul is feeling that. It's like constantly feeling like someone is taking from them. Like, that's why there's so much tension in the world right now. We have nothing to give. We're so empty. And we also feel like everyone has all these expectations for us, but also we have these expectations for ourselves, because of our perception of ourselves is actually very restricted, very limited, can't actually be able to access this original sense of self. So what I love about this study is it helps me to cut to the chase, is that it's not really about these things on the surface that I'm looking for. It's the feelings inside. And when I start to actually experience myself to be a soul and feel what that feels like, and feel that while I come into action and interaction, that kind of attainment, like nothing can replace that. And you start to feel your interest for those other things, it just starts to badger you less. And it's not then about that you're giving up on things, it's just that you start to become more clear about what matters. And that if you get those things or not, it's not going to be affecting your sense of contentment. It's not going to be affecting what you feel is what really matters. So not sure if that made any sense. So I just want to pause right now if you have any thoughts or questions. So feel free to let us know if you do. It's just really amazing how that what we're looking for is something very, very invisible. And to be able to keep a sense of purpose, even when it comes to physical examples, I think many find it very, very challenging. And I remember this, that when I was very young, I just started university, and I just had, I don't even think I thought about, no, actually, no, I did think about it, but I definitely had a lot of second thoughts, a lot. And I was very clear about that. But I had going in with the sort of the intention of going to medical school, and here, at least in Calgary, you need to complete a degree first, and you need to have 2 years of what we call general studies. So you're just taking whatever courses, because the intention is it will give you an idea of what you really want to do, because it might not be what you think it is during the first 2 years. So I remember I was in this lecture with someone who was just giving information about medical school. And so we're all entry level, just started university. And the individual was saying, how many of you are planning to go to medical school. And there was like, almost everybody put their hands up. And then they said, 70% of you will not now continue on this journey or will give up. And I remember in my mind, sitting in that room, that thought passed my mind was, I'm one of those 70%, because I knew in my heart, it wasn't super clear, but if I reflect back on it now, it's like, I didn't want to go to medical school. It didn't matter to me. It was maybe something that my parents wanted. It was something that other people thought it was a prestigious thing to do, but I didn't really want to do it. And I remember, because I used to journal all the time, that was not something I wanted to do. It was not fulfilling at all. And so when it is not something that really matters to you, you're not going to put the effort in it. And I was like, yeah, nope, that was totally really clear to me. And I had met somebody when I used to work at this place. It was several years later. She grew up, when she was 6, she had cancer in her kidneys. It was a Wilms tumor. And so she was in the hospital often at a very young age. But her experience being in the hospital was a beautiful experience. And so when she went to remission, and she never had any issues after that. So I guess you can say she was cured. Fast forward through time, probably maybe 12, 13, 14 years later, since that time when she was young, she kept this book, like a journal, like a scrapbook, and she added to it constantly that I am going to become a doctor. Like, it was just so clear to her. And she was the one that was mentioning about, she applied to medical school many times, but it was because she kept it very alive, what her purpose was. So when it comes to this study, it's even more subtle, right? Because it's very easy to lose ourselves in projects, lose ourselves in a lot of things to do, and maybe even lose ourselves in terms of things that we might think is going to fulfill the purpose. And taking the time to actually experience who I am is so important, because it's the feeling that you're trying to capture. Because being able to be aware of what matters to you is one big piece, but to be able to actually experience what matters to you adds so much more power to it. And so being able to start to know who I am is a big, big piece. It's illuminating. It's really re-educating who I am, but to experience who I am. And that's why we always encourage for souls to come to the drop-in sessions or online, the experience sessions, because that's the piece about both of being able to recognize who I am and what is really going to fulfill me. And that's why the study of Raja Yoga, it's really for anyone. It doesn't even matter what walk of life. It doesn't even matter what denomination, because at the end of the day, what everyone is looking for is that experience of themselves. They might not realize it's themselves and they're seeking it out there, but it's that feeling. I love this example, is that you might even be hearing somebody who's arguing and they just want to be right, but it's the feeling of being right. That's what they're going for. It's really not really about, the topic of argument, whatever it is. There's something that's connected to feeling right and feeling stable inside. So a part of my reflection constantly is, what is my purpose that's driving me? What is my sense of self? Have I gone deep enough? Do I feel I need to go deeper? Do I have that experience of what it feels like to be me? Because then there is that connection. Then what do I need to do to fulfill that? And so we'll just have, something else that is a layer of that makes it more challenging, because when it comes to something very physical, like going to medical school, it's like you complete year 1, you complete year 2, you might even get certificates. You might, okay, now you've passed, now you can go to residential, become a resident. You can pick whatever your focus is. But when it comes to spirituality, learning to be able to see milestones within yourself as well. So that's why oftentimes we say, what is my identity? It's very connected to purpose because it's the seed. And if you know anything about seeds, they're completely invisible of what's inside of it. You can't see it. It's just this little tiny little dot. It can be, it might even if you looked at, let's say, 2 rose seeds, you can't tell what each one is going to grow into. You can't tell which one's going to go into a red rose, which one's going to become a pink rose. It's all locked in that seed. And that's actually like us. And one of the aspects of Raja Yoga that you learn is that it's not, our ideas of spirituality have become extremely unhealthy. Is that when it comes to be able to know what's really fulfilling on a physical level, purpose is always about being able to, it's all about the actions. It's the career. It's what it looks like on the surface level. This is what I'm going to be like. This is what others are going to perceive of me. This is how much money I'm going to earn. And these are all the things that are going to happen. And it's all so constantly visible. It's all about the actions. It's all about the tasks and the final product. Now, the interesting thing about spirituality, yes, there is a final product, but what's the difference is what's driving that. So Paulina shared here, knowing our inner purpose makes our life simple and comfortable. There's absence of conflict and violence, and you're able to see the goodness in every soul. And that's wonderful sharing. And you can use it as a milestone. Am I getting closer to that? Do I feel that there's more simplicity in my thinking, especially when it comes to upheaval? When things happen, like I said, there are a couple of messages that were sent to me today that were interesting. It was quite reactive. Didn't expect that. Those are the responses that would happen. But would I let that complicate things inside me? Will I take that in and complicate, my perception of myself? And will I let it complicate what matters to me? And a sign that I am moving in the right direction of fulfilling my inner purpose is that there is more simplicity. And even this piece, actually, you mentioned, Pauline, is when there's more and more clarity of what matters to me, there is more simplicity in what I want to focus on. So there are certain milestones that I can look at. And so, of course, we're looking at us more spiritual. And so there's this absence of conflict and violence. And a big part of it too, and what I was mentioning about when it comes to spiritual, when it comes to purpose, yes, there is a final product, but what matters the most is what is driving that, the entire foundation that is completely invisible that drives it. So it doesn't matter if you are, you are whatever the career that individual is looking for, or whatever the life event it is that individuals are trying to, attain. It's not about those things. It's actually about how I feel about myself and how I feel about things that happen and how I feel about others. When that stuff is secure and solid and healthy, and filled with the integrity of what is originally who I am, of how I see and feel about all of these things, then there's nothing that can make you feel like you've lost anything. And so this is the contentment piece that was mentioned earlier, is that there is no contentment when we don't have purpose, or what we think is our purpose, but it's not actually relevant to me, the soul. So that's why it's interesting that when we use the idea of the seed, is that there is a program within each of us. There are a set of original qualities of who we are and how we want that to express in life. and how we want to feel that within ourselves. That is what is fulfilling to us. So we're just going to take a moment to just have this time to reflect. And a big part of it is because there was mention earlier, I believe by Pauline, about letting go. Yes, letting go of unnecessary things. The part of considering myself to be a soul is about the experience of letting go. But what is letting go? Who is letting go? Like I, the being of letting go. Right now, I'm not very aware of myself, who I am, but I'm holding on so deeply to the image, to the expectations, to what others think, to what things are going to look like. I'm holding on so tightly to them. And that only when they do this, only when this happens, will I feel okay. And those are a part of the robotic thoughts that can go on inside. Just as robotic as, just go to the fridge and grab something. I go brush my teeth, you go just get in the car, turn on the car, just start the car. So robotic that we also have very robotic ideas too of what's going to fulfill us. And the part of that quiet time is the stillness we talked about is to see all the stuff going on inside and checking. Fulfilling those things, is it really, really going to fulfill what really matters to me? Is that really going to give me the contentment I'm looking for? And so taking a moment, we'll perhaps maybe bring up this point of focus, because you certainly don't need to be looking at me. This image is just meant to be a representation. It represents the feeling of simplicity, the feeling of focus, the feeling of stability. It's the feeling that I want to take with me. No matter who I am, what matters to me is actually not visible. What matters to me is at the level of experience. I seek for that feeling of stability, simplicity, for lightness, for freedom. Because what I'm looking for is actually myself. I have lost access to myself. I thought it was in the mountains, in the lovely weather. I thought it was in relationships with others. I thought it was in the accomplishment of certain projects, certain endeavors. And I may feel some attainment, but it's not going to last when I'm seeking it out there. What I'm looking for, am I interested in it being something that I can access again and again, regardless of circumstances, regardless of the past, regardless of physical limitations? Is that appealing to me? This stillness that speaks to me, when I have that quiet time, that what I'm looking for, that would feed me, is where my sense of self, the feeling of contentment, the feeling of my integrity is not affected by things around me, by others, by circumstances. That stillness, that groundedness is actually me. Me right now, me the being, however I am, whatever I am. It's me, the soul, who is attracted to that experience. What I'm feeling right now, trusting that is my true quality, my true nature. I am just this gentle presence inside this body. A guest. That feeling of lightness is my true nature. That's why there is an aversion to heaviness. And even now, an aversion to responsibility. It's not the responsibility itself, it's the heaviness of owning things that are actually not defining who I am. The more I hold on to things that are not me and are not mine, the heavier I feel. I'm just a point of consciousness. This stillness I feel is who I am. Just a guest in this body looking through these eyes, hearing through these ears, remembering who I really am. That this is a costume I'm sitting in. The name I identify with actually belongs to the costume and the personality of the costume. I have an eternal identity, an identity of peace, of love, of bliss, grounded in truth. The true me is actually pure. There was a time when I was completely untouched by physicality. I didn't keep the experiences of physicality. And all I could feel was just being full, always light. No feeling of fluctuation, feeling limited. So anything of the past, anything anyone has said to me, anything I've done, none of that is me. This state of vibration I am in, just being, just this stillness. This is me. Just feeling me, no trace of physicality. This is what heals me and continues to reinforce what my true purpose is. My purpose is to be able to feel fulfilled. We do use that in very physical ways, but it never really fulfills me. This is why being aware I'm a soul. What feeds me is spiritual love, spiritual peace. What feeds me is truth of who I am. To be aware of who I am and to feel the truth of who I am. This allows this lightness when I feel who I am. This lightness to let go, even if it's just at this moment. The body isn't who I am, the image. Not what others think of me, what I thought of myself. None of that is me. I invite you now to just hold that feeling. Now, thoughts can come in your mind. It's okay. Watch those thoughts, but hold the feeling. And just be aware of cherishing what you're feeling, because that really helps to help hold the feeling. And I want you to stand up where you are. And I want you to walk around with that feeling. Now, don't worry about where you're walking, just more that you can feel that feeling with every step you take. You can feel that feeling with every breath you take, with every moment you blink your eyes, with every movement you make. You are feeling that feeling transfer into the body, into the breath, into the step you take. And staying inside. It's not about how you're moving the body, it's the feeling you have as you move the body. That even your gaze, you can feel your gaze, wherever you're looking, it doesn't matter, but your gaze is filled with that feeling. Feeling that it's the quality of you, the soul. You are making that body move. Don't think too much, just that you are in there, in that body, you're feeling who you are. And that as the body moves, because you're in it, making it possible, that you are contributing with you, the quality of you. So I invite you now to come back to your seat. And just reflect on what that feeling felt like while moving. And when you have, take whatever time you need. I'll give you a few minutes. What was that feeling like? And you're welcome to share in the chat box or unmute yourself. Feeling light and full, very content. You know, there is something that we often mention in the study is it's your angelic form. And what we mean by that is we don't mean these white wings and, you know, a halo on your head. It actually means that you're experiencing yourself to be a soul. You feel distinct from the body, but now your relationship with physical is actually light. And that light is not just, it's not physical light, it's the feeling of lightness. And actually, light in terms of enlightenment, it's based on knowledge. Is that now you have this way of operating that's called angelic, where your interaction with things is very light. We use that word detached, but it basically means you are distinct from the body. And it is so fulfilling to operate from that place. Any other experiences to share? And please don't feel that you will get this on the first, attempt. This is the whole intention, is to plant those seeds of what exactly it is that I'm really actually looking for. And when we're making that difference between physical purpose and spiritual purpose, what we usually do is we just do our actions, whatever it is. We're so focused on the superficial. We're not focused on what's driving, what the feeling of how I am like while I am in action and interaction. And so what we're always inviting is that take the time to practice and experience the quality of who I am. That's where that seated practice is. And I'm very cognizant when we came in the study, until I'm feeling that while I'm seated, and there is a hint and it is a suggestion. Of course, we don't expect souls to, you have to do it, but the invitation to want to experience it with your eyes open. Because the foundation of the study is that the identity of you is that you are a soul. Whether you're aware that you're a soul or not, you're still a soul. You're a being, a consciousness, you are a spiritual being. There's actually so much proof, actually, in our own lives that we're not just this body. So even if I'm not aware of myself or not, I'm still in there. And I'm still unknowingly feeling qualities of myself, but however have associated with things out there. And so that's a huge thing, because I associate out there, I don't really feel it's me, who I really am. But to be able to feel who I really am and take that time to feel it has nothing to do with the eyes are open or not. That's a myth that we have had from trying to go on a spiritual endeavor. But there's a very big difference. And I remember one of the students had done this exercise with a group of individuals. What does that feel like when you close your eyes trying to feel peace versus when you open your eyes? And one of the things that I have discovered, being in this study, is that there is a very big difference from peace when you close your eyes, and even from nature, from when it feels like it's you, it's who you are. And there was one time I was invited during, there was a filming that they were trying to do in Peace Village, which is located at the top of a mountain. And this is in New York. And so they had asked us to go sit on the top of this mountain, and they had these drones flying, and they were filming us, just being in that solitude. And it might look so nice when you're watching the video, but if you're the one sitting there, like the wind was blowing, like your hair was going all over the place. There was just things flying on. There was dust, everything. It was, if you were relying on physicality for a pleasant experience, it was not a pleasant experience. But I remember I'm just sitting there, and there was a few of us, and you could see everyone's grappling, just trying to even, to get themselves into like a peaceful state. But I remember when I was in this silence, yes, in the middle of a beautiful place, very beautiful. The scene was gorgeous. The weather was gorgeous. Everything was lovely about it. But I remember being in that stillness of me, the soul, and I could feel a very clear difference. The silence of me, and there was the beauty and silence of nature. And that experience continues to stay with me, especially when it comes to this aspect of the inner compass that we talk about, be able to discern and start to get to know what I am like, because that's a very important piece of being able to feel what I'm like. And it's, of course, a journey for sure. So this aspect of inner purpose, it's actually all about contentment and happiness. So that feeling that Pauline was sharing about, we often call that liberation in life. Not liberation, not just free yourself from your problems, but to be able to feel free while you're living life, to be able to experience the real sense of who you are while you're in action. Like that is really what this is about, this contentment piece. So you are learning to resolve these so-called obstructions we have in our life because we're healing the very essence of accessing the experience of ourselves. So I think we're going to have to end here and see if you have any questions or comments before we share your blessing. Let us know if that made sense or if you had any challenges. As we mentioned, definitely takes time. While souls might be typing something or not, I wanted to mention, of course, with the essence of time, there's a big component that we didn't have time to go into, but which is the connection with the Supreme Soul, which is absolutely huge in this study because the one that souls remember is God. What his function is in the study is that he's always in that state that's real, always grounded, always in that state that's true. And he plays a huge function is because I am waking up, but his function is to wake me up, tell me the truth, but also to nurture my capacity, his vision of me, his very company. It all nurtures me. It's all in service to getting myself back again. So Jima has just shared, it is always nice to reflect on what's happening on my way of life, how I feel, how I respond towards life. Ultimately knowing my sense of purpose, knowing who I am. Yeah, for sure. And I was just chatting with another student, and we were sharing that so this is the question I had asked earlier, is it possible to be very clear on just trying to do the how and forget my purpose? Like I would have been very clear of my purpose even in the study, but then start to get really into the nitty-gritty of I just need to practice making sure that my practice of soul consciousness is very accurate. But then I sort of forget, the whole point of this, and remembering the point of this, that I will get there, that I will become this being, this angelic being that actually Pauline was sharing about, is a huge piece. So I invite you, if you are interested, to watch the sessions interview with Raj Yogi, Spiritual Readiness. I think it was a 2-part session, because it's very related that when I become disinterested in what's not fulfilling me and become very clear what matters to me, it really affects the quality of my study. And that's something I need to sustain throughout my entire journey of what I'm trying to do for myself. So let us know if there's any other thoughts. Taking care, and so Pauline shared, taking care and nurturing the seed, 1000%. Living with the experience and self-mastery towards our inner journey. Absolutely. I've been thinking so much in the last few years about sustenance. You have a beautiful seed that has all this capacity, which is you. And to awaken it is one thing. Recognize yourself as one thing. To nurture it is another thing. Because a part of nurturing is, I think, something that Jima had mentioned about, there are things that are going to happen. And it's so easy to get distracted, sidetracked, and get disheartened. And when you forget the purpose, then you don't really have the energy to do the how. So this is where the how and the what are very connected that way. So if there's anything else to share, let us know. Thank you so much for joining. So I'm keeping my eye on the chat box, but I'm also going to share your blessings. So if you are open, I'm going to share the screen. So for Pauline, this one is for you. You are a soul who enjoys the freedom of truly knowing the self, an eternal awareness that does not seek to be valued from the outside in, but contributes value to the world from the inside out. So we'll be sending these to you by email. So thank you again, Pauline, for all of your input. Always lovely for you to be here. Sheila, this one is for you. Let's see if I can get this into work. Okay, Sheila, you are a powerful soul who serves as a peacemaker on the world stage through quiet acts of love and regard. So we chose these blessings on purpose because, I know a very lovely student in the study when she realized that my purpose in life is just to be a peacemaker. Like, it was like, I'm done. This is what I want. It's like not all these things on the surface level. It's just how I am on the inside. So thank you, Sheila, for joining. Thank you for your sharings and your thoughts. Again, we will email this to you. And for Jima, thank you for joining. And this one is for you. Rather than being overwhelmed by the distance to the destination, you aim inwards at cultivating self-belief, which inspires you to set your sights even higher. So these are actually all very beautiful blessings that we can all take in deeply for ourselves. And it really is about this aspect of purpose is actually, yes, it's invisible, but it is absolutely something we can feel and completely fulfilling. And this is why we need to revise our purpose. And of course, the how. Experience who you are as a soul, because it's invisible, but it is absolutely what's going to sustain you and fulfill you. And so thank you for those who've joined online as well. This is a blessing for you. You are a wise soul who knows the nobility of the self is never lost, just kept safe in the container of the heart until the perfect moment comes, is reawakened. And so that's so connected to the spiritual readiness that we had shared about that session, because there needs to come a time when actually I am ready. And I may not know, actually, most of the time we don't know when we are ready. So thank you so much for everyone for joining. If you ever have any questions, you can email us, and we will send these blessings out to everyone. So we'll just have one moment of silence. So just wrapping things up for myself, just taking one thing. Maybe it's one feeling, one insight, one realization, taking one thing. Hold that in your attention, in your interest, that one thing. There's some reason why it spoke to you. And I invite you at some time today, even if you don't write about it, just reflect about it. Have an inner conversation of why that one thing really spoke to you. And then that one thing kind of becomes a network for everything else that you have had a chance to experiment or explore or reflect from today's session. So thank you again for joining. Just a warm reminder, we have one more workshop at the end of this month, which is Inner Stability. And that is on June 27th on Sunday, 5 o'clock to 6:15. And for those who wish to stay, you're able to join for the experience at 6:30. So a bit of a break, and then you can join at 6:30. And that's actually a powerful opportunity if you stay, because you've had time to churn and reflect and experience, and it leads to a very beautiful experience session for yourself. So thank you again for everyone for joining.